this year. My name is Alex Meyer, and this year I'm the chair of the Civic Conference Committee, the CCC. We are the ones who put this event on, as well as the Meet the Candidates Night in the fall. And just as a brief explanation, the CCC's job is as both a search committee and a vetting organization for those seeking public office in Glen Ridge, both for the Board of Ed and for the Town Council. This event basically starts our search process for potential candidates for the upcoming November election. So if any of you, after this evening, find yourself interested in seeking nomination for either the council or the board, feel free to talk to me or one of the other CCC members, or shoot me an email. We'll have an email going out to the town within the next week or so. But the purpose of tonight is to give residents of town, either those toying with the idea of seeking public office or those just seeking to get more information about how things run, but to get information out both from Board of Ed President Betsy Ginsburg and ex-mayor and current town councilman Peter Hughes. We're very lucky to have very committed, talented, dedicated people like Betsy and Peter working for the town, and fortunately they've been willing to volunteer their time for us tonight. I think initially we were going to have Betsy speak, but Betsy has been going from meeting to meeting to meeting this evening, so we're going to give her a little bit of time off to gather her thoughts, and Peter has been kind enough to volunteer to speak first. In both of their cases, we asked that they be willing to get up and speak generally about what the roles and responsibilities of a councilperson or a Board of Ed member would be. Time commitments, responsibilities, as well as other potential opportunities for those wishing to seek to take a role in town governance. So we'll have them speak for a little while at first and give question and answer time to each representative when they're done. And when we're all finished, we'll adjourn to the waiting room, and you can always ask questions then as well. So thank you again for coming, and Councilor Peter Hughes.
I wasn't expecting such a large crowd tonight. We're not here to talk about turf, that's a good thing. We're here to talk about the town council and potentially, interest in maybe serving on the council. So let me start off by just describing how the council works. There are 6 members on the council, and then our mayor, Stuart Patrick, who couldn't be here tonight, he's traveling. And each council person is elected to a 3-year term. But they're staggered, so each year we have 2 people who stand for election or re-election, and then the mayor serves a 4-year term. I think there's a certain wisdom in staggering the terms. Some of our neighboring communities have, they have slates of people who get elected, and as a result, every 3 or 4 years they have a brand new group that comes in. Whereas in Glen Ridge, because we stagger them, there's always an institutional memory that's sort of there. And so when a new council person comes on board, there's some experienced council people who can help guide them and help them get up to speed quickly. And then when there's a transfer, there's still people who understand what the issues are in town. So it's a 3-year term on council, 4-year term on mayor. Each council person is asked to chair a committee. We have 6 standing committees: public safety, public works, planning and development, parks and rec, finance and administration, and community affairs and outreach. And the chair of that committee has then 2 other council people who sit with them on the committee. Years ago, it used to be a little more formal. We would have separate meetings outside of the council meetings, and we would meet as a committee. Now, what we try to do is we try to do it all on the same night to sort of make it easier for people, so that on a Monday we start typically around 5:30 or 6:30, depending, and then the formal meeting starts at 7:30. So we've handled the committee work, and then we go into the council meeting, and then from 7:30 until whenever we're done, is generally the meeting. So we meet two Mondays in a month typically. In the summertime we meet one Monday a month. It's the second and fourth Monday. So if you're working and you're traveling or you have commitments, it's fairly simple to, or not simple, but it's easy to sort of organize your work week so that, like typically I'll just travel on a Tuesday morning, and then that way I can get someplace and get going, or work around a council obligation. So it works. Certainly there are time commitments outside of the 2 council meetings a month. There's committee work. There's a variety of assignments that can be given to you. Certainly, when Anne Marie Morrow, when I suggested to her that she would maybe run for council, I assured her that it was going to be a piece of cake. And we assigned her on planning and development, and then also on the planning board. Now, the planning board, on which there is an opening, and we could use a volunteer. We could also use a volunteer currently on our historic preservation committee if anyone has an interest or a talent on that. I'll try and come back to that. But I convinced Anne Marie that she could handle the time commitment quite easily. And then, of course, we had all this development that took place in town with the Mountainside Hospital, the nursing building. And needless to say, she spent a lot of time working on that commitment. But I think it's winding down now quite a bit. And that is going to be a big development in town, and one that I think is going to be beneficial. If anyone wants to ask me about that later, we can. So the committees have certain responsibilities. I chair currently the Finance and Administration Committee, and our primary responsibility is the budget and making sure that we get the budget in order in a timely fashion. We typically get it done between January and March, and then we send it down to the state, and then the state plays around with it until they're supposed to get it to us in May, I think. But typically it's June or July by the time we actually get it. The way the town works is we encumber our finances primarily through our budget, almost exclusively through the budget. So there's almost no spending that's allowed to be outside the budget. So the process is transparent, and taxpayers can see where we're spending our money, and can certainly have an input as to where we spend our money. A lot of it, I think, to a lesser extent, in the town side, is committed to salaries as opposed to the Board of Ed, where I think most
We're over 80% salaries and benefits.
Yeah. Our bylaws state that the standing committee is to plan, study, direct, and make commitments within budgetary limitations, perform such acts as may be assigned to it by the council, report and make recommendations, and propose new programs. Fundamentally, I think the council functions somewhat as a board of directors of a corporation. I mean, we're responsible for overseeing the day-to-day activities of the borough, making sure that we live within our budget, and that we respond to the unforeseen or unexpected, and then also, make sure that we're paying attention to the needs and desires of our residents, and that we're functioning in a way that they're proud of us and happy about us. The council can pass 2 types of laws. One is a resolution, which expires at the end of the calendar year. So if we make a resolution to change something, if it's by resolution, it expires. The alternative is an ordinance, which then becomes a municipal law, changing a parking regulation or something like that. And that stays then on the books until it's either changed or repealed. So that's kind of how that works. Typically, there are four votes needed to pass. There are 6 council people. Each person votes. If it's a 3-3 tie, then the mayor votes. Otherwise, the mayor doesn't vote. Any questions on just sort of this? Okay. Time commitment, which is always, a big issue, I think, for volunteers. I did describe a little bit, there's the 2 meetings a month, maybe 2.5 hours, times 2 is 5 hours, and then some of the outside stuff that it really depends on what's going on at the time. Planning and Development's been very busy right now. Parks and Rec can be busy at different times of the year. Not much going on in the winter, but certainly in the spring and fall, Parks and Rec is very busy, working with our rec department, making sure the fields are in good shape and are scheduled properly. Public Safety, the commissioner meets once a month with the chief, and we review all of the events of the month, personnel issues, legal issues, training issues, that sort of thing. That's a very interesting committee, working with the chief. When we have labor contracts, we have two unions in town. We have the PBA and the CWA, which are the public works people and people that work in town hall. Those are typically 3-year contracts, and when those have to be renegotiated, there's some extra time involved with that. We have a liaison with the planning board, with the library board. We have meetings periodically with the county down in Newark, and we try to meet with our neighbors in Montclair and Bloomfield to see what's going on with them. I think one of the other commitments of time is just interacting with residents. I mean, phone calls that come in or emails that come in. Again, we have a couple of petitions that are gathering some steam in town, and there's some meetings involved with them to try and guide them through the process. We certainly, we welcome petitions. They sort of express the feelings in town, and we're really looking for that. We're really looking for the feedback. The way it's supposed to work is that when a resident has an issue with something in town that they either want answered or clarified or done, typically the first call should be to the town, either Public Works Department or the registrars, or ultimately Mike Rohals, who's our administrator. If you don't get the answer that makes you happy, then the next call should be a council person. The council person should then intervene on your behalf to see if it's being, if your concerns are being addressed properly. And if you're still not satisfied, then you pick up the phone and call the mayor and hopefully get him involved. But that's sort of the way it's supposed to go, at least in my opinion. Let's see. Qualifications, I think Alex is one of the things. I think the ideal candidate for someone who's running for council is someone who's lived in town for a while. Someone who has sort of a resume of volunteerism in town, who's served on some of the various organizations in town, boards, commissions, agencies, school boards, GRAA, library, just something that shows that you have a commitment to the town and have a sense of what it is to be a ridger, and then I think a willingness, to volunteer and give the time. I mean, once you demonstrate that, then we know that you'll be a worker. I think, at least in my opinion, a lack of any kind of preconceived agenda, a willingness to, come to a meeting with an open mind, to be thoughtful, to be willing to listen, and to be willing to be persuaded. I think that's really important. And I think, to respect both the members of the council and the members of the public who come in and may have a different point of view from what you have, but to be able to understand that, you have to listen to that, and once again, be persuaded if the facts are right, and if the data's there. Oftentimes, I think the conclusion is fairly obvious. And finally, I would say, a willingness to leave your ego at the door. Some of the meetings can be long, and some of the meetings can be heated, and to have the ability to just sort of, to be patient and let people vent. And then finally, I think there's a wisdom in government. I mean, we can always study it to death, and by doing that, we let time intervene, and then I think good outcomes tend to come to the fore. So that's my pitch. We're looking for volunteers. We have over 100 appointments that we make every year. So if for example, someone wanted to serve on the planning board, we do have an opening, or on the HPC we have an opening. If you have a background in that or an interest in that, we'd certainly be interested in hearing from you. And we'd like to, so the first step would be either to reach out, give me a call or send me an email, or anyone else on the council, or go to the website glenridgenj.org and fill out the form, and then it'll go straight to Mike Hall, and then we'll reach back out. Yes. Hi.
I'm curious, you mentioned that there are a couple of petitions circulating right now, and I'm just curious about what kind of issues people petition the town about.
Years ago, the white lines on Ridgewood Avenue was a petition. I was familiar with. That's kind of what got me involved in politics a long time ago, believe it or not. My wife got mad and I got involved. We have an issue. There's one. The sanctuary city issue is one that is coming up, and very interesting. I think it's a very interesting issue. That's kind of one of the reasons why I like being involved, is you get to really dig in on an issue like that, which, you know, it's got two parts to it, in my opinion. One is just a procedural part, you know, on policing, and the other one is more of a larger political sort of element, which is people, I think, are trying to express their dissatisfaction with what's going on in Washington, potentially. And so how do you sort of balance those two issues? So I think it's going to be really interesting to read up on it and listen to what people have to say, and see which way the town wants to go on that. So that'll be an interesting one. We've had petitions for the pool, for example, when years ago, I think Ray, were you on the council at that point? Yeah, Ray and I were on the council together at that time, and for many times residents wanted to build a town pool, and it failed. I'm going to say 2 or 3 times, probably going back into the 60s, 70s. And so this group came forth and said, we'd like to get a town pool built, and we said, okay, get a petition up, and they actually got 500 or 600, I think, people on the petition, and then we challenged them. We said, all right, if you could get some seed money, we'd be willing to support it, but somebody's got to put some money on the table, because we didn't want to take all the risk. And it actually worked out. I mean, it's really a success story, that the town pool, the money was raised by the membership, it was matched by the town. It's been sold out pretty much each of last year for the last 8 or 9 years. It has a sinking fund, so that, you know, the membership dues we're putting money away for the, you know, future repairs, and it has not cost the taxpayers a dime out of the tax rate. So that was something that was really effective, I think, in bringing an issue and proving that there was, you know, enough support to make it worthwhile. There's another one I think that's out. Issue is noise. Landscapers and blowers, and, you know, during the day and stuff like that. So that's another issue that we'll be taking a look at. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Councilman Hughes, can you tell us a little bit more about the role played by the various volunteers, staff, boards, and commissions that operate in the borough and their role in borough government?
You know, the 2 main ones would be the Board of Adjustment, which is, I'm going to say tax issues, is one way to describe it. And then you've got the Planning Board, which is development issues. So if a developer wants to come in and needs a variance, for example, he would have to go before the Planning Board, or the owner, the homeowner would have to go before the Planning Board to get a variance. And, you know, the zoning in town is critical to maintaining the quality of the housing stock in town. And certainly our HPC, Peter Hughes here, you're the chair. Pete, you're the chair, right?
Yes.
Yeah, with the HPC. And, you know, in my mind, there are 3 things that really are the legs of the stool in town. You've got our school system, which Betsy's going to address. You've got transportation to New York, as critical, and then, the housing stock, and just the historic character of our town. Those are the three things, in my opinion, plus all the friends that we've made. But, I mean, it keeps our town the way we like it. I mean, the reason why we moved here, I think, was because of the quality of the architecture and the beauty of the streetscape and sidewalks and all those types of things. So, those committees perform a lot of work. I mean, the HPC, the development in town has really been remarkable. The revenue, for example, we look at the revenue from permits that have been issued. It was up by at least 50% this last year. It was a big number. And of course, much of that work then has to go for approval in front of the HPC. And is it 9 members on the HPC, Pete?
Yes.
9 members on the HPC, plus several alternates.
Well, we have 7 main members and we have 2 alternates.
Okay,
Right
so
now
9.
we have 8,
Right,
so we're short 1.
and very busy.
Yes.
And very busy. The planning board is an independent organization. I mean, they have their own, I believe they have their own bylaws, and they have their own council. And if, ultimately, I think if there's an appeal, the appeal would come from the planning board to the council. I think that's right, Bob. Yeah. HPC, I think they can appeal from the HPC to the council as well.
To the planning board.
To the planning board, and then planning board to the council. So those 3, planning board, board of adjustment, and HPC, I think would be the 3 most active organizations in town where we need help. One of the things we had a volunteer come forth. The Red Cross was for years providing a service to transport seniors to doctor's appointments for the most part, non-emergency type thing, and then the Red Cross wanted to drop that. So we met with the person who was organizing that, and we matched them up with our volunteer ambulance squad, and now the ambulance squad has adopted this service, and so we've been able to maintain it and now operate it through the ambulance squad. So that was a win. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. Oh, yes, sir.
Let's see, I felt, Mr. DeSapley over there, I live in a residential house.
Okay.
If the taxes go up, will our rent go up?
Well, I can't answer that question. Probably,
Yeah.
would be my guess.
How much would it go up?
Well, I think it depends on a couple of things. It would be the tax rate times the assessed value of your home or where you live. But generally speaking, it's probably going to be a small percentage of the current tax bill. So,
Like what, 9-10%?
no, I'm going to say probably. We have caps on the amount of
2%.
increase that we can have. So Betsy's capped
2%.
of 2%. The town has a 2% cap, and the county actually has been pretty good about not having so. Absent any kind of additional expense, you're probably looking no more than on your tax bill 2 to 3%, but that's not going to fall necessarily directly into your rent, but it's typically not that much.
Also, on Freeman Parkway and Bloomfield Avenue, that light and all the lights on Bloomfield, on Ridgewood and Bloomfield. Actually, Freeman, they don't give you much time to cross. Because it gives you 30 seconds.
Tell you what, why don't you come to the council meeting? I think it's next Monday night. Why don't you come on and bring those questions to the council meeting? Okay, well, anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think that if anybody was going to point to an exemplary public servant, it would be you. We've both been in the game for a while, and because we love it, I think. I am Betsy Ginsburg. I am proud to be president of the Glen Ridge Board of Education. We have a 9-member board, and the president of the board is elected from within the board each year. So Unlike the town council where the council is elected and then we elect the mayor specifically, the board, you are elected to be a board member, and then your fellow board members may elect you to be president, as happened with me. We also meet twice a month. We also meet on Monday nights. Sometimes we overlap with the council, sometimes we do not. Our meetings, usually we have an executive session at 7 p.m. when we discuss matters that are relative to litigation, personnel, things that are sensitive that would expose the board to liability if they were heard in public. Everything else goes into public session, which starts at 8 o'clock. Our meetings usually between executive and public session are about 2.5 hours, so there's a 2.5 hour time commitment there. Each of us is also on a committee. We have our big committees, which are personnel and policy, curriculum, finance and facilities, and negotiations, and then we have a committee that meets just a little less often, which is communications. Each committee is 4 people, 3 members plus the president. Any more than that would be a quorum, and it would have to be a public meeting. So everybody is on a committee, or 2 or more. The president sits on every committee. Everybody is also a liaison. We have liaisons to all of our home and schools. We have liaisons to community organizations like the GRAA and the Gaslamp Players. So board members are busy with both the basic duties and the committee and liaison work. So the time commitment can vary. We meet during the 10 months of the school year. We meet generally twice a month, depending on the holiday schedule of the schools. And then the summer we meet in July when we have our annual board retreat, which is also a public meeting. We, in the recent past, have not had an August meeting unless there is a compelling reason, unless there's some business that won't wait. So that part is variable. So the commitment is the basic work, the committee and liaison work, and then we, like the council, we receive a packet in advance of materials to study before the meeting. So it might take you an extra hour or so every other week to read your packet so you're prepared for the meeting. It's always a good idea not to be surprised when you come into the meeting. We, on the Board of Ed, say we like to operate in an environment of no surprises. That's impossible, but we try to get close to that. The great credo for boards of ed in New Jersey is that we are not there to run the schools. We are there to make sure the schools are well run. So as with the council, we are a board of directors. We set policy, we oversee the budget making process. We approve all appointments made to the school, all hires and fires, but we do not interview candidates except for one, the superintendent of schools. The board's great responsibility when that office becomes vacant is to hire a superintendent. Our chain of command in Glen Ridge is very small. We have the Board of Ed at the top of the chain, superintendent, the principals of our 4 schools, plus a couple of our director of technology, our director of our business administrator, and below that, really, our teachers. So we do not have a large chain of command. We do not have a large administrative structure in Glen Ridge. It's one of the great beauties and one of the great challenges of our system. So the board's role is to oversee the operations of the schools. We do not go into the schools day to day. We do not write curriculum. We have all kinds of degrees of professional expertise on the board. We have right now 2 lawyers. We've had up to 3 lawyers, which is a good quantity for a Board of Ed. We have an architect. We have teachers, college teachers. We all have varying degrees of expertise in varying subjects. We are not hired to be educators. We are hired to make sure our educators are working properly. We are not hired to be school administrators. We have professionals for that. And respecting the professionalism of our employees is one of the keys to making the Board of Ed successful. If your employees feel respected, your school district operates efficiently and well, and your children benefit from that. So one of the prime qualifications for Board of Ed candidate is the knowledge that if you want to write curriculum for a school district, then you get the appropriate educational credentials and you get hired to do that job. You don't do that as a Board of Ed member. If you want to be a school administrator and worry about the percentage of students that are wearing flip-flops, or the number of harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents that are in the school, then you get the appropriate qualifications for that. The Board of Ed reviews material from those people, but we don't do those jobs. I think the primary qualification for Board of Ed member is an interest in education. And I will say that there has never been a time when good Board of Ed members are more needed than now. When everything else, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, when everything else in society is chaotic, the schools have to stand. The public schools of our nation and our state and our town have to stand. So there has never been a time when board service is more critically important. So the qualifications, knowing that is a good qualification, but the qualifications are intelligence, an interest in education in general, a lack of agendas, as Peter said. People who come on with single agendas are invariably disappointed because board service deals with so many aspects of the educational process. And I see my former colleague, Robbie Marocha here, he knows that. You have to, I think it's a good idea to have some knowledge of the town, to have lived here a few years. Many of our board members have come up through volunteer organizations, just like council members, whether they've served on the home and school associations, who are very, very important to our schools, have coached, have been on boards of the nursery schools their children have attended. It's good to have a little bit of group decision-making experience, because I can't say often enough, part of being a successful board of anything, whether you're on the council or the Board of Ed, or the ruling body of your church, is the ability to understand the consensus-making process. That doesn't mean you don't have opinions of your own. That doesn't mean you don't express your opinions. But it means that at the end of the day, you have to make a reasonable policy that will do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And sometimes you have to be able to accept the fact that you're not going to be on the winning side of every argument, and understand that that's not about you. It's about an essential part of the process. So group decision-making experience of some sort, whether it's at your place of work, whether it's in volunteer activities, is important. A sense of humor is a critical component necessary for board service. I think probably for council service too. You deal with some things that absolutely will break your heart, and then you deal with some things that will just crack you up, that will make you laugh. And you have to laugh sometimes. Lincoln said it really well. You have to laugh sometimes so you don't cry. When you're dealing with children, when you're dealing with the myriad pressures that our children are under, and you're making decisions that affect almost 2,000 children every day, you have to have both wisdom and a sense of humor, and the knowledge of when you need to use both those qualities. I think the best board members have had both of those. You have to have a tolerance for public discussion, because people, when they're speaking about their kids, are extremely passionate. And a respect for parents. If you don't respect parents, you should never be on a board of ed. Parents are still, they come to us, they entrust us every day with the oversight of the education of their children. So we have to respect them. We must respect them. So those are the good qualities. We serve there are 9 of us. We are in classes of 3. We serve 3-year terms. So each year, 3 seats are up for grabs. Sometimes incumbents run again, sometimes not, but each year 3 seats turn over. So you go to the polls every fall and elect 3 school board members. We used to have elections in April, which were separate from the state and national elections. Now we have our elections at the same time as everyone else in November. Let's see. Our biggest responsibilities in addition to hiring a superintendent are overseeing the budget. In Glen Ridge, our budget is almost entirely provided by residential property owners, because as you know, we have very few rateable properties in Glen Ridge, and we get very little state aid, because the state funding formula for education, which is extremely complicated, but is basically wealth determined. Glen Ridge, being a community of perceived affluence, receives very little, probably it's less than 5% of our total school budget comes from the state of New Jersey. We lobby ferociously to increase that amount. We're hopeful that maybe some changes will come, but we also have to understand that we are always going to be heavily dependent on residential property taxpayers. So budgeting is a challenge for us every year. We never know what our state aid figure will be until mid to end of February, and we have to set our budgets in the spring, just like the town. So it's always kind of a scrabble around this time of year to plug in our state aid number and get our budget to the county. We are responsible to the State Department of Education, so their official arm is the county superintendent. We have to run our budget by the county superintendent, who does with it what he wants, just like with your budget going to the state. And then we get it back, and then we send out notices if we're going to if we have to lay someone off because of budget cuts, we have to send them out notices by May 1st. So our budgeting process takes place in the spring. So that's another important responsibility of the board. A third important responsibility is negotiating the contracts with our unions. We have two unions. The biggest one is the Glen Ridge Education Association, which is the teachers union. It covers teachers, it covers basically anybody who's not administrative staff. So teachers, teachers' aides, custodians, just about everybody. And then we have another very, very small bargaining unit, which is our Administrators Association. So we just on Monday night approved the new teacher's contract, which goes till June 30th of 2019. And we, next year, will negotiate with our administrators. So negotiations, the negotiations committee sometimes has very little to do, sometimes they have way too much to do. We've just come out of a difficult negotiating cycle, not because there was rancor between the board and the teachers, but because the amount of money, the amount of discretionary money that the board has is not large. You know, I always say that people will have an argument over a loaf of bread, but they will fight to the death over crumbs. And right now, in terms of discretionary money, boards of ed have crumbs. So the fighting is more intense. So we negotiate. And I think one of the big challenges of board service now is it's gotten more complex. Every year that I've been on the board, and I was first elected in 2000, board service has become more complex. Board members are the best trained public servants in New Jersey and perhaps the United States. When we are elected to the school board, we have to go for mandatory training by the New Jersey School Boards Association, which is our trade lobbying and advocacy group. That is a legal requirement. You must complete your board training, NJSBA board training, in the first year of board service. And then every year thereafter in your first term, so for the next 2 years, you have another board training. And the ones in years 2 and 3 last about an hour. They're not as bad. And then if you run for re-election, every first year of a new term, you have to have board training again. So we are extremely well-trained public servants. I have had New Jersey legislators tell me that they wish they had something like Board of Education training. So you have to, if you run for the board, you have to set aside the time commitment to have the training as well. And you have to have a criminal background check, just like a teacher or a school employee. So those are the requirements and the responsibilities. Are there any questions? Yes?
What's the process to facilitate change curriculum or just some of the programs? Is it best with the superintendent or the council?
It is, if you want to, well, it depends whether you're talking very, very big changes or smaller changes. You know, if you have a classroom situation where you think a curriculum isn't working for a student or a group of students, then you talk first to the teacher, then to the principal, and if you're still not happy, then you go to the superintendent, and if you're still not happy after that, then you come to the board. If you want to make a major change, say you have an idea that you want to completely change the high school schedule, say, because you think you have an idea that there's a better way to do it, then you come to the superintendent who discusses the idea with you and will give you some background probably, and he may bring the idea to the board. So it's really very simple.
But if the superintendent chooses not to support it, what's the recourse?
He doesn't have that ability. If you bring it to him, he has to bring it to the board. The only real reason for that not happening would be if you suggest something that the board just considered last year, say, and it's already been recently discussed and not accepted for some reason, then the superintendent could tell you that. But basically, if you bring him an idea, he needs to bring it to the board.
Is the superintendent also responsible for what is purchased? Let's say.
School supplies and,
Yeah, supplies,
yes.
books.
Yes, he has overall supervision. We have a school business administrator who is our chief financial officer, who is also basically the chief purchasing officer. So he does the day-to-day of purchasing and getting bids and,
So they operate outside of the Board of Ed?
no, they do not. They operate under the supervision of the board.
Oh, they do, oh.
Yes, all budgeting, all expenditures of public money are supervised by the board of ed.
Are those volunteer positions?
Yes, they are volunteer positions, nobody gets paid.
Interesting. Thank you.
Other questions? My goodness, I bored you to death, I can tell. I have to say, for board service, we don't have the number of volunteer committees that the town does, but if you want to put a toe in the water, the home and schools are a great way to do it. Some of the other organizations that deal with kids are a great way to put a toe in the water and work your way up to board service. It is the most joyful kind of service there is, I think. There is nothing that feels better than watching graduation. I think Peter would attest to that. You watch graduation, or you watch second graders making a garden, or you watch adolescents who are absolutely crazed most of the time working on a robot or something like that. There is absolutely nothing better, and there is absolutely nothing more hopeful. And at a time when society seems a little chaotic, there is nothing that restores your faith more. So I would encourage you, run for the board if you want to, involve yourself in an activity that deals with kids if you're not sure, but remember that each of us is responsible for the way the kids of this town turn out. And board service is absolutely the most joyous experience. So thank you.
I'd just like to thank Betsy and Peter once again on behalf of the CCC, and it's about 9 o'clock right now. Folks would like to adjourn to the lobby and enjoy some refreshments and possibly follow up with more questions. If you have questions about the CCC, feel free to find me. Once again, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Let's do that.
Should have, like, oh, this is the right place.